I will not be watching the Game Awards ever again. I've been very vocal about this. The show is completely dead to me. It has no bearing on my decisions or opinions. I don't care about it. But to a certain extent, I do think I do need to keep talking about why I feel this way and why the show is a complete and total joke. Because if you don't spell this out to people, they do this weird thing where, like, well, you were fine with Breath of the Wild winning Game of the Year. Actually, no. I was very vocal about how Nintendo was treated by the Game Awards up to that point, and afterward, right? I was very adamant about the company getting shafted near constantly in every single way, shape, or form, and it reached its apex in 2023, where the entire gaming industry tried to rally to prop up industry darlings, The Last of Us Part Two, and actually The Last of Us HBO, and Alan Woke 2 over the far superior Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? Like, again, this is typical for game journals. They always, 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 always understate the success and popularity of Nintendo games. Like, I think it's safe to say that Mario Wonder, out of all the games that were nominated for Game of the Year that year, is going to be the most fondly remembered 20 years from now. Like, to me, it's not even really a question, but to the gaming establishment, like, no, it's a 2D platformer. Nobody cares about those. Like, again, how interesting how all these genres that excel on Nintendo consoles are somehow irrelevant in the eyes of the masses, in the eyes of the game journos. And to me, this is just an example of just everything wrong with the Game Awards setup. In theory, like, I think every single game that was nominated for the Game of the Year should have been good. But the reality was all of them were shill picks and all of them were there because they were supposed to be there, not because people actually liked them or cared about them at all. And I think that feeling permeated through the entire show. It wasn't just about the Game of the Year award, it was essentially everything. And the way it looks to me is that Nintendo feels the same way. Is that they have been slowly pulling back their support for the Game Awards. It wasn't that long ago where they were having a lot of ads shown at the show, but in 2023 they seem to scale back from that. Probably because they knew what was going to happen. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see if they ever release a statement about this. But the way things are looking in 2024, right? The aftermath of 2023, it's kind of shocking seeing like the different kind of air in regard to the show, because there was a period of time, like, I think from 2020 to now, where this show was actually starting to be taken seriously, right? People started getting hyped for the Game Awards. They started talking about it like it's the gaming's Oscars. Like, they started like saying the show was a big deal and that it was like the Game Award show, which isn't true, by the way. Nobody involved in the Game Awards has any credibility at all. Jeff Keighley is a joke. But for a while there, they really had that image constructed. They had that narrative set, and people were buying into it. Not so much after 2023, in part because of how they degraded Nintendo, but also because they chose to prop up things that nobody cared about. Stuff like Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, and Starfield, right? Like, again, it's crazy to me how with Alan Woke 2, they nominated a game for Game of the Year that hadn't sold a million units. Like, how often are we told that Nintendo games can't be nominated because they don't sell enough, or they're not relevant enough, or they're not culturally significant enough? And yet, like, a significant portion of their releases are far more relevant than Alan Woke 2 was. Like, it's interesting, the double standard there. Like, you'll never see a Pokemon game get nominated for game of the for a game award, but you'll see Jeff Keighley come out and shill for Power World, right? You won't ever see them like talk about um these lo- uh these lesser known Nintendo IPs. You won't see them talk about ARMS or Kirby or what have you. Yeah, yeah, they have that like family award where they just give like a major Nintendo game that, and it's not even part of the show proper, right? Like it's just a consolation prize. What did I used to call it? Uh, I had a specific term for it. Oh, I forget. But like, it's basically just like a pity award. Like, oh, here you go, Nintendo. It's cute that you tried. Like every single time they do this. But like, 2023 was different because I think they came out and made it very, very obvious, like what they thought of the company and how they felt about the upcoming releases, right? Like how they felt about that year's entries. They were very adamant that Baldur's Gate 3 was the greatest thing ever made. And for 3 months, it was all they could talk about, right? Like Baldur's Gate 3 is the greatest thing ever. And they gave it a Game of the Year award, and the game was promptly forgot about. Like again, like every single time this happens, like game journals prop up some woke product that nobody cares for, and then it just goes away. But uh, because they did that, a lot of people are upset about them, and people are learning more and more about how the game awards are actually structured, like who the judges are, how they execute their decisions, and why they make these calls. And the more you learn about this, the less respect you have for the format. Like the more you begin to realize that this is absolutely Jeff Keighley's shill show. People made a big deal about this idea that like, well, Jeff Keighley doesn't make the decisions. It's an industry wide thing. Yeah, the industry that we've established for decades that to be extremely corrupt. Why would I ever listen to what any game journalist has to say about any game ever? Right? I don't even look at their review scores anymore. Right? That's how little I care about them. But for the Game Awards, I'm supposed to just buy this idea that Baldur's Gate 3 was Game of the Year. Bullshit. Absolutely bullshit, right? And for 2025, oh, well, this year, for the award show for 2024, they have already caused a controversy, like a real issue that really needs to be talked about and really needs to be brought up. The Game Awards is allowing DLC campaigns to be nominated for Game of the Year. Now, this is obvious. Now, it's obvious why they're doing it. They're doing this so they can shill FromSoftware, Shadow of the Erdtree, and pretend that they're hardcore gamers. This is a big thing for game journalists. Like, oh, I can beat Elden Ring, so that means I'm good at games. Like, they're going to do this to prop up Elden Ring, right? They're not really thinking about the fact that the DLC wasn't well received and that it wasn't a new game, that there were better games that came out that year anyway, and also in 2022, by the way. They're going to ignore all of that just to talk about Elden Ring again. And I do think this kind of behavior, this kind of decision making is going to alienate a good chunk of the audience because people aren't interested in hearing about how Elden Ring is the greatest thing ever 2 years after it came out. It doesn't matter that I got a DLC campaign because nobody but the most hardcore of fans are going to play it, right? Like if Elden Ring wins Game of the Year, it's going to be a big blow against like all these other titles that came out in 2024. Now, there was nothing good that came out this year, but at the same time, people who are fans of like, Metaphor ReFantasia, which I think might actually win, or anything else that came out this year, like they're going to be left in the dust because Jeff Keighley and his ilk need FromSoftware in order to keep up the illusion that they're hardcore gamers that really, really love and care about like difficult games. Without Elden Ring, without FromSoftware in general, like the illusion that these people are good at games like completely dissipates, right? It's been a cope from them for years that, well, I've beaten Dark Souls, so I know what I'm talking about. Like, no, that doesn't prove anything. Like it's their go-to cope whenever people like bring up the fact that they don't know how to play games and they don't know what they're talking about. Like, oh, I beat Dark Souls. So I don't know if they're gonna give Elden Ring Game of the Year again, but it's a very distinct possibility. And if they do, I can't imagine the majority of the audience is going to appreciate that because it's going to feel as if Jeff Keighley has an extreme bias towards FromSlop because Elden Ring won, Sekiro won. I'm sure the next I think Armor Core 6 was nominated. I don't remember, I don't care, but people are really getting sick of these games being pushed to the forefront as the industry's best when they're really, really not even close. And yet we have to deal with this every year. Oh, FromSlop put out a new DLC. It got tiring a long time ago for sure. And this sets an awful precedent because if they keep doing this, we may have this situation where GTA 6 comes out, it wins, and then it has multiple expansions. So in theory, we could see Grand Theft Auto 6 win one year, it gets an expansion, and then it just continually wins forever or gets nominated forever because Grand Theft Auto 6 is just that spectacular, guys. It's just appalling, right? It doesn't really allow room for new games or developers to prosper or take the spotlight. It's just a method of shilling a product that's fashionable without any real consideration for the quality or whether or not it deserves it or not. Again, I'm not even invested in the Game Awards, right? But I'm disgusted that they tried to do this. And I do think this needs to be talked about more. I do think people need to address the fact that the Game Awards are uh, are awful, not only because of the games they pick, but because of what they choose to nominate. I do think this is the big thing. When you look at the categories, when you look at what's nominated for the categories. Remember when they nominated Sifu for best fighting game? It's not a fucking fighting game, but you fight people in it. That's not what the fighting game genre is. It's how are you that out of touch with the industry where you don't know what a fighting game looks like? You don't know the core aspects of the genre that distinguishes itself from action games. Like, imagine being so stupid you don't know the difference between Mortal Kombat and Sifu. That is the game journalists. That is their panel of judges. That is Jeff Keighley. These people don't play the games they assure you are some of the best ever made. I guarantee you that Jeff Keighley never played Elden Ring. And yet he's going to go up on stage and try to tell you that this is some monumental contribution to gaming. It's no. Stop. You are embarrassing yourself.